On Broadway, first-round NHL draft pick Gene Carr was dubbed the New York Rangers' next superstar. In L.A., he became the Kings' new kid in town and was influential in some of rock and roll's most iconic songs and albums. But by 1979, his fascinating life and colorful career were gone, replaced by the harsh realities of non-stop pain, crippling addictions, failed marriages, and the betrayal of the hockey establishment. Many people forgot about Gene Carr until he returned to the spotlight in 2019 when the new kid in town discovered he might also have a new kid in his life. Gene Carr was born in Nanaimo, British Columbia in 1951. His dad, Red, was a former NHL player and his mother, Pauline, was an accomplished speed skater. It seems that Gene was born to be a hockey player. At age 17, he joined the Flin Flon Bombers of the Western Canadian League and replaced graduated center Bobby Clarke on the Bombers' top line with Reggie Leach. Considered the fastest skater in junior hockey, Carr compiled 2 productive seasons in Flin Flon and attracted dozens of scouts to Bombers games. How good was Gene Carr? In a 1971 NHL draft that yielded Guy Lafleur and Marcel Dion, Carr was almost selected at the number 2 position. In fact, New York Rangers GM Emile "the Cat" Francis labeled Carr as the top prospect in the draft. Rangers Director of Scouting Dennis Ball praised Carr as, quote, "the greatest prospect I've seen in 20 years." On draft day, Carr was selected to the number 4 spot by the St. Louis Blues, but Francis and the Rangers were undeterred. When the Blues won just 3 of the first 14 games in 71-72, they panicked, and the Cat pounced. After just 14 games, the Blues traded Carr to the Rangers with Wayne Connolly and Jim Lorentz for the modest price of Andre Dupont, Mike Murphy, and Jack Eagers. According to Carr, who had scored just 3 goals to that point, Blues GM Sid Abel told him he, quote, couldn't wait any longer for him to produce. Naturally, the trade shocked Carr, and he had to get a real culture shock when he arrived in New York and was held up at gunpoint in a phone booth. But Carr's debut at Madison Square Garden couldn't have gone better, as he scored 2 goals and added 2 assists in the Rangers' 12-2 drubbing of the California Golden Seals. With his long flowing blonde hair and world-class skating speed, you couldn't miss Carr, and it seemed like the Rangers had pulled off a major heist. But the 1971-72 Rangers were a loaded team, especially at center where Jean Rattel, Pete Stemkowski, and Walt Tkachuk patrolled the pivot. Carr was shifted to left wing and saw limited playing time. He endured a 33-game goalless streak and totaled just 3 goals after the U.S. Thanksgiving. Carr became the forgotten man until Francis used him in his blinding speed to shadow Yvan the Roadrunner Cournoyer in a Round 1 series win versus the Montreal Canadiens. Carr was resurrected in this role, and he continued his solid play Round 2 with 3 points in 4 games against the Chicago Blackhawks. He also got plenty of playing time in the Stanley Cup Finals, which the Rangers lost in 6 games to the Boston Bruins. In the 1972-73 training camp, Carr was given the left wing spot in the Rangers' Bulldog line with Tkachuk and Billy Fairbairn. But when he struggled in the season opener, he was replaced by Steve Vickers. But Francis gave Carr a reprieve in a January 17 game versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Carr responded with a 3-goal game. But in the very next game against the St. Louis Blues, he suffered a broken collarbone courtesy of a crushing body check from Blues defenseman Bob Plager. Carr never got back on track. He logged just 9 goals for the season. According to Vickers, who went on to win the Rookie of the Year award, Carr was supposed to be the next Bobby Hull, but it didn't turn out that way. He had trouble scoring, and then when Bill Chadwick criticized him, it didn't help his credibility in the eyes of the fans. The big whistle, Bill Chadwick, was the popular but old-school Rangers TV commentator who looked down on Carr's long hair and flashy wardrobe. He was often brutal to Carr, stating, quote, Carr couldn't put the puck in the ocean if he was standing on the pier. And then Chadwick really piled on when he said, quote, to succeed in hockey you need 3 things: legs, a brain, and a heart. Gene Carr has the legs. In an interview with author and Rangers historian George Grimm, Carr recalled, quote, I don't know why Bill attacked me. He had no idea how that affected me mentally. I used to just cringe when I heard him say something or they would bring up my name. I wish I could have talked to Bill before he passed away. I would have asked him, "Why did you attack me like that? I didn't do anything to you." Carr's fortunes as a Ranger would continue to deteriorate in the 1973-74 season. Following a 10-2 loss in Boston on November 15th, Carr and Mike Murphy, who had been reacquired by the Rangers, stopped by Derek Sanderson's bar, Daisy Buchanan's. To make curfew, they left the bar and hailed a taxi to return to the team's hotel. It was a cab ride that almost ended Carr's life. The cab was T-boned by a police cruiser chasing after a stolen car. Carr and Murphy were both injured and their heads smashed against a plexiglass divider. The cab driver suffered a broken neck. Bloodied and dazed, Carr and Murphy wandered the streets looking for a hospital when they were picked up by none other than Derek Sanderson, who rushed them to Mass General Hospital. Both players sustained upper body injuries and concussions and were sidelined for 3 weeks. In an Inside Hockey article, Carr recalled, quote, "I didn't realize how severe that was on my body. I don't think I ever recovered from that body trauma because it seems like I had nothing but physical problems after that." Once he returned to the ice, Carr struggled to find playing time and scored just 1 goal in 23 games. At one point, he was demoted to Providence of the American League. Miserable at his spare part status, he decided he wanted to only play on the West Coast and demanded to be traded. He was just about to sign with the WHA's Vancouver Blazers when he was traded to the LA Kings for a first-round 1977 draft pick, which incidentally turned out to be Ron Duguay. The laid-back Carr felt right at home in LA, compiling 17 points in 21 games for Bob Pulford's improving Kings team.
To Tom Bladen. Bladen's pass goes over to Watson. Watson tries the headman. It's stolen by Nevin down the middle. Nevin over to Carr. He shoots. He scores! Bob Nevin stole the puck and gave it to Gene Carr on the left wing. And Carr breaks the ice. The Kings lead it 1-0.
Carr took to the California lifestyle like a rock star. He hung out with the late Glenn Frey and the band The Eagles, who called him Hockey Hollywood. Frey, a Michigan native and a hockey fan, had seen an LA Times profile of Carr, who noted that his favorite band was the Eagles. Days later, a box full of Eagles records arrived at Carr's locker stall at the Forum, with Frey's phone number attached and a note that said, quote, "If you love my music as much as I love watching you play hockey, then we have to meet." According to Gene, I called him the next day, and we were instant friends. The rock star and the hockey player became inseparable. In fact, Gene is said to be Frey's inspiration for the Eagles' 1977 hit, New Kid in Town. Frey would often wear Carr's number 12 Kings jersey in concert, and Gene would find himself in the center of LA's 1970s rock scene, hanging out with Jackson Browne, Joe Walsh, Bob Seger, David Cassidy, and John Mellencamp, among others. Although he scored just 8 goals, Carr was a key defensive figure in the Kings' amazing 1974-75 season, which saw them jump from 78 points in 73-74 to a franchise record 105 points. But Carr missed much of the 75-76 season due to surgery needed to remove fluid that had built up on his spine. The operation was so complex, the doctors warned him there'd be a chance he'd never walk again. But after 8 months of rehab, he healed and began to show signs of his projected talents with a 15-goal 1976-77 season.
In the middle, his pass broken up by Dion, and here he comes with Carr 2-on-1. Over to Carr. Carr on a breakaway. Montreal zone. He shoots. He scores! A short-handed goal, and the Kings have the lead 3-2. Beautiful.
Despite these flashes of brilliance, Carr sat on the bench a lot, and he knew it was time to move on. Glenn Frey stepped in and assisted Gene getting out of LA. Eagles manager Irving Azoff was one of the music industry's most influential power brokers, and, at the urging of Frey, he made Gene Carr his one and only sports client. Azoff then told Jack Ken Cook, who owned both the LA Kings and the LA Forum, that if he didn't trade Carr, the Eagles would never play at the Forum again. So 5 games into the 77-78 season, Carr was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins with Dave Schultz for Syl Apps Jr. and Heartland Monahan. But before leaving the Kings, Carr scored one more dramatic goal to seal a rare Kings victory in Montreal.
Gold up to Maneri, King zone, and Maneri ahead to center ice to Carr. Here's a breakaway by Carr, all alone, in front, he shoots, he scores! The Kings broke Gene Carr loose at the red line. He went right down the slot and drove it past Ken Dryden.
Carr enjoyed his best season offensively in Pittsburgh, scoring 19 goals and adding 39 assists. In the offseason, he signed a lucrative 4-year free agent contract with the Atlanta Flames. However, prior to the 78-79 season, he barely survived a violent automobile accident when he crashed his new Mercedes-Benz into a pole. The passenger side of the car was broken off from the car in the accident, but Carr, alone in the vehicle, was banged up, but seemingly okay. But his back problems intensified in Atlanta, and he labored through 30 games and was eventually forced to retire at the age of 28. But Gene wasn't done inadvertently influencing rock culture. During this time, he attended a party Azoff hosted for new rock client Van Halen. Carr was wearing a t-shirt that had the slogan Hockey 5150 printed on it. That caught the attention of Eddie Van Halen. When Gene explained to Eddie that the 5150 slogan was the police code for a crazy person, Eddie asked if he could use that. And soon, 5150 became the name of Van Halen's studio and the band's 1984 #1 album. Gene returned to Southern California and, thanks to Azoff and Fry, landed a Teamsters job as transportation coordinator for Universal Studios and Steven Spielberg. Although Carr was a big success at Universal, his hockey injuries and the resulting dependence on painkillers caught up to him. By his count, Carr has had 3 neck operations along with 6 back surgeries, 2 knee operations, and a hip replacement.
Talk about hopelessness. There was a lot of times this past year and a half where I really didn't want to be here. That's the truth. Because I thought, why live like this? The pain is so bad that I couldn't bear it anymore. And then I would take these morphine pills because the pain was so bad that I just had to do something. I was desperate.
In 2015, Carr was told that only the burgeoning stem cell therapy could cure his ailing back. In a Toronto Globe and Mail profile, he expressed promise in the news about stem cell surgery and tried to contact the NHL Alumni Association about getting help, but got nowhere with Alumni President Mark Napier. Feeling hurt, ignored, and betrayed by the alumni, he eventually connected with the NHL Players Assistance Fund, which is primarily funded through the NHL and NHLPA. The cost for stem cell surgery was a hefty $30,000 US. But Carr asked if he could take a loan for the $30,000 to undergo stem cell replacement. Although he was classified as 100% disabled by the state of California, he was told no, so his life of pain persisted. In 2017, Gene planned to return to Kelowna, BC for a reunion of the Kelowna Buckaroos hockey team. During a phone interview with Carr, Kelowna journalist Charlie Hodge mentioned Gene's girlfriend from his youth, Shannon Lavelle. A melancholy Carr responded that, quote, "I never should have lost touch with her. It was all me. I was a fool." When Hodge suggested that Shannon and Gene should meet for coffee, Gene said, quote, "I would like that, but it won't happen, I'm pretty sure. It's been a long time." Eventually, the hockey reunion was postponed, but Carr returned to Kelowna anyway and had a reunion of his own with Shannon, who had agreed to meet for coffee. And then they met again and again. In October 2017, almost 50 years after they first met, Gene and Shannon were married. Shannon was under no illusions. She quickly learned that her new husband's serious health issues went well beyond his back, leg, and hip pain. According to Shannon in a 2019 Facebook post, quote, "Gene lives with the darkness. Gene lives with chronic anger. Gene still hides his pain. Anger at everything hides his emotional pain and mental distress. Every day is a tough day for Gene Carr. His mental and physical health have been all but destroyed. He has all the symptoms of CTE, chronic, traumatic, encephalopathy." By 2019, Carr's misery continued, but the drama in his life was far from over. This latest episode in his fascinating life story was chronicled by journalist Lisa Dillman and Eric Tuhatschek in a highly acclaimed feature in The Athletic. Tracy Tooley, a 47-year-old mother of 3 living in Wisconsin, had learned at a young age that the man she believed was her biological father probably wasn't. Later, her mom revealed that her father may in fact be an ex-hockey player who played for the St. Louis Blues in 1971, Gene Carr. After much hesitation, she reached out to Gene, and eventually a DNA test proved what she had suspected. Gene Carr was her biological father. As Tracy told The Athletic, quote, "Then he called me, and I was crying so hard, I say, 'You're my dad.' And he got quiet. He was so happy. I can't just imagine him being any other way than how sweet he is with me. How fatherly. We text every day. We could be on the phone forever. We like the same music, especially the Eagles. There are just all these things we have in common." The two agreed to meet in Wisconsin at Tracy's place of employment. It was a magic moment for both. According to Carr, "I looked at her and she hugged me and she cried for probably 10 minutes. My heart just went out to her." Later they attended a University of Wisconsin hockey game and met with Badgers coach and former Ranger and King Tony Granato. Later in the Athletic piece, Carr, who has a son from a second marriage, discussed getting to know his daughter. He said, "I love Tracy. I really do. I talk to her like I talk to nobody else. She's my daughter, and I love her." For Tracy, the feelings are mutual. "It's just the greatest thing that somebody loved me and somebody was proud of me," she said. For the man once dubbed Hockey Hollywood, Gene Carr's life story continues to read like a Hollywood script. And it's a script with a happy ending. A father and daughter who are both proud to be called the new kid in town. The Pro Hockey Alumni celebrates the players who made the game great. If you like this documentary on Gene Carr, check out this story from hockey's golden era.